I've been asked a few times now, Mark, who are your favorite political figures? I have a few I can relate. So, in order from local to national, I'll begin with Ann Uccello, mayor of Hartford in the late 1960s and the last Republican to be mayor of Hartford. Stand-up sounding gal. She won election against the very strong machine run by Mr. Bailey. In the local realm also, Ella Grasso, who I remember as governor being forceful, being not elite, comfortable in her working class roots, principled, and carrying principles today that very few leaders in my party still have. She was against deficit spending. She was against having, well, she was pro-life, so against a lot of restrictions on abortion. Joe Lieberman also, I think, in some ways heroic. What he did in the 60s down south took a lot of guts. As a leader in the Senate here, I think he was pretty good, and again, held a good position for Democrats that I wish more Democrats would get back to. Unfortunately, he was run out of the party because this party's leaders have moved so far left. At the national level, everyone should revere the founding leaders, those men and women revolutionaries who risked their lives for a better nation. Look, in the 1770s, American colonies, before their separation, were the most prosperous people on earth. Your average colonist lived better than your average landed Englishman. Yet, we wanted more freedom. And the people who fought for that were risking their lives, because if we had lost the Revolutionary War, those leaders would have been hanged. Okay? And so they had a lot to give up. Most of them were very wealthy. Otis, Washington, Jefferson was fairly wealthy. Adams, Paul Revere, Franklin, they risked so much when they could have gone about life very comfortably for the rest of their days. All right, as president, I think George Washington does merit top 5. He set very good standards. There were calls for him to be more of a monarch, and he refused to be that, didn't want the title of anything other than what the Constitution said. Treated Indians well, or at least attempted to. Set a lot of good standards that we still have today. Jefferson, as first-term president, tremendous, okay? Expanding our territory while limiting the use of government. He really cut it down. Didn't have a great second term, but great first. Probably merits a top 5 ranking. Polk, best president of the 19th century. He was skillful in having us fight a war against Mexico that we could win, but stayed away from fighting against Britain, which we might not have won. You got to go all the way to Coolidge for my next great president. Calvin Coolidge was really a throwback to the line of both Republicans and Democrats who felt their job as president was not to be very active, that America flourishes without government interference. Well, we had 20 years of interference after interference, from McKinley all the way to Coolidge's, sort of predecessor, Woodrow Wilson. And it was Harding and Coolidge who really brought us back, and Coolidge was the most steadfast of keeping government out and let the business of America help us flourish. Truman ranks high. I'm not sure if he makes the top 5, but he does it based on one act, the Marshall Plan. And ladies and gentlemen, to me, the restoration of Germany, our most bitter enemy in 1945, that 2 years later, we had a president that had us do a recovery of all of beaten down Europe, including our bitterest former enemies. This, to me, was the most American act in our history. And it was unprecedented. When you fought a war and won in history, you beat down the enemy. You might have enslaved them. You certainly subjected them to reparations and a lower status. We went out of our way to elevate the Europe that had mostly destroyed themselves. Look, it was good for America too. Okay, having more commerce was a good thing for us. But what a far-sighted thing to realize. And the Marshall Plan helped with us stabilizing against Soviet aggressors. So that was a good thing for the whole world. Finally, Reagan. Now, his accomplishments I laud on the international side. I do like a president that will cut taxes, but he doesn't cut spending, so you can't give him the full credit that many do on the domestic side. But firing Patco workers when they were out of line, good. Making a stand that the business of America should be less regulated, excellent. On the international front, it was the Soviet Empire that came down on his watch and largely by his doing. Okay, supporting the Polish workers that were on strike, quietly arming the Afghan Mujahideen. We defeated our bitterest enemy without even firing a shot. That is great international leadership. All right, and finally, you gotta laud, though not a president, Martin Luther King, for again being about the most American of leaders. And I wasn't around to hear him, but when you hear how he spoke and how he took such risks in the name of elevating a whole lot of people, that to me is heroic. He also, and the nonviolent nature, this is a guy who stood while he himself was being beaten at times, hosed down by thugs in the corrupt southern governments at the time. But his message is, we're going to peacefully resist and show the world what we can do without resorting to violence ourselves. This is powerful. We all deserve to listen more. All right, thanks for asking. More to come.